Welcome to this presentation. The agenda of this presentation is pipe rack, piping and layout. In our last video, what we have covered, we were discussing the column piping and layout, and it was the last part where we discussed supporting and flexibility requirements, operation and maintenance that was related to columns and piping. Okay, so now in this video we are going to start discussion on pipe rack, piping and layout. So let's start with our presentation. This is the total agenda what we are going to cover under this section. What are the total inputs required, conceptual design, we'll try to understand what is the interconnection diagram, how we can calculate the rack width and number of tiers, and we'll look at operational maintenance and access requirements, how we decide the elevation of transverse beams. Okay, this will be covered in conceptual design. Then design consideration, we'll try to cover guidelines for placing lines on pipe rack, battery limit configurations, supporting and flexibility requirements, equipment on pipe rack, platform above pipe rack, and what kind of 3D deliverables which are generated based on this information. Okay, so let's start with the input required. So if you see, as we have discussed in other previous sections, the similar things are required to start with the pipe rack layout. For example, the plot plan and site plan. This is the basic input which is required to generate any kind of layout. Project specification, whatever project we are working in, we will be having some specific project specifications. Those we have to gather. Grading plans, what is the grade elevation at different point of time. Then logistic study of the site. This is generally done by the civil, but we need to have this study with us to start pipe rack layout. Then again, block flow diagram, process flow diagram, and process instrument diagram. This is the basic thing which we require for any layout and piping. Line list, of course, we need to know which line is coming from where and which line is going where. Battery limit schedule, what are the lines which are entering into a particular unit and what are the lines which are exiting from that particular unit. So this is the basic information which we require to start pipe rack layout. And other than this, we should have with us work instructions, design guides, data bank which we receive at the starting of the project. If we don't have with us, then we can always ask from client through our project team. Okay, so all these things we need to have in hand with us so that we can start working on piping layout. So let us look at first thing which we need to do before starting our layout for pipe rack. First thing is interconnecting diagram. Now let us understand what is interconnecting diagram. Basic line diagram showing all the lines entering and leaving a plant which are to be routed on pipe rack along with the interconnections with all the units equipment on the plot plan. Okay, so we need to have a plan what are the basic equipments are there and how many lines are going and how many lines are entering into pipe rack and how many lines are coming out from the pipe rack. So that means we should have a plan with us where all the lines entering and exiting in the pipe rack, that means whatever lines are running inside the pipe rack, that we identify at this stage. So what is the purpose of interconnecting diagram? It gives the modeler an idea of all the lines coming on rack for planning. Okay, once we have this kind of diagram with us, we can plan anything like how many lines are there, okay, how many people will be required to route these lines, and all that stuff we can plan based on this diagram. Line routing on for rack size calculation. Once we know, okay, 100 lines are there, then we can plan our rack accordingly. Okay, assists in material takeoff. We can always take preliminary material based on this diagram. Okay, because we know what is the length required for routing the line through pipe rack and when it is connecting to two equipments. So that way we will be having an overall picture with us and we can generate MTO from this document. Pipe rack loading calculation. Now we know what is the size, what is the length, how many fittings are there in pipe rack. We can always start working on loading diagram. Okay, assists in piping flexibility studies. Okay, stress team use this diagram to finalize their anchor location and loop locations. Vessel orientation. Now as we have discussed in column section, if we are planning a vessel here, we can plan ki, okay, these nozzles should be towards rack. So this diagram helps in nozzle orientation also, vessel orientations. Vessel orientation as well as nozzle orientation. Location of sub pipe rack. Now suppose in particular section we see there are so many lines which are entering into pipe rack, and we can group together and we can have a sub rack based on that. Okay, so this diagram helps in locating the sub racks also. Equipment location, we can always fix equipment location, because through this diagram we can understand the flow also, how many lines are entering from this side, entering toward this side, and exiting from the pipe rack. So based on that we can plan our equipment locations. Economics of unit and overall plot space. Now we know how many lines are there, how many equipment will be connected, and what will be the sequence at a single page. Okay, so we can always do our overall planning for the overall space requirements. So this is all about interconnecting diagram and why it is required and how it helps in further layout developments. So now look at small section where we are calculating rack width and number of tiers. Okay, this is a very conceptual thing where so many stakeholders are already involved. Anyhow, locate the most congested piping area. Now if you see, we have done an interconnecting diagram with us. We can locate what is the most congested piping area. Okay, this is the first thing to decide width of the pipe rack. Depending on the number of lines in above area, calculated the total linear space required including the feature space. Now if we know how many lines are there, and if we know what is the spacing criteria for us with us, and we know what is the feature space required, okay, and we have already located the congested piping area, so clubbing all these two things, we can always decide the width of pipe rack depending on the space available and client slash HOD. Okay, that's why I was telling, this is a very conceptual thing where so many stakeholders are involved. Okay, this width and number of tiers will be decided after discussion with client and HOD. Decide the number of tier and width of rack. Space consideration for lines which are having hold down supports. Okay, suppose there is reciprocating compressor or reciprocating lines. If pulsation vendor is there, based on pulsation calculation we require some hold down supports, and if you see, for hold down supports we require some additional space, so that thing we need to consider while deciding the width of pipe rack. Okay, so this is small criteria. If you see, space between two adjacent line will be half OD of larger flange, half OD of larger flange, this one, plus 25 mm, this one, then half OD of smaller pipe. Okay, so from this point to this point, this is the minimum spacing criteria which is globally used throughout the plants. But in any of the project, as we have discussed in the starting, project specifications will be required. In that project specification, if anything different from this is required in a particular project, that will be mentioned in project specification, so we need to follow that thing only. So based on this discussion, we can always go for calculating the width and number of tiers for interconnecting diagrams. So these were the three things which we discussed: input required, interconnecting diagram, and how we calculate the width and number of tiers from interconnecting diagrams. Okay, in next part we'll try to cover operational maintenance access is required in pipe rack, then how we decide the elevations of transverse beams. So see you in the next part.